Morning.
Morning.
Oh, good. Hey, we're alive. Okay, good. All right. Turn with me to Matthew 5, 43 through 48. This is Hebrews. That's not helpful. Matthew 5, 43 through 48. Really easy one today, guys. Just real simple. We'll get through this one real easy. You've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even tax collectors doing that? And if you greet your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. All right, this one's easy today, right? Nothing profound or life-changing in any of those sentences. Just be perfect and love everybody who doesn't love you. Just real simple, real good. This is the conclusion to this sort of opening set of the Sermon on the Mount, of these. I didn't come to get rid of the law. I've come to fulfill it. And we've got all these sections of him describing the law and then fulfilling it. So we finally get this conclusion of this little mini section that we've been exploring, right? So the last Sundays, we've got Jesus announcing God's kingdom, and he's inviting people to redefine their humanity, right? Jeremiah 31 people, I'm going to write the law in their hearts. We're going to put it right here that it gets modified. It's not a set of rules to memorize. We're going to change the way that they interact with the world, right? So he's announcing this new kingdom. What do the people of this kingdom look like? He's inviting people to live under this rule and this new ethic of this kingdom. So he's got the outcasts, the nobodies. He said, you've received the kingdom first. That's why I like that song, Reckless Love. When I was your foe, when I was your enemy, when I was all these things, that's what he's saying at the beginning. When you were nothing, I still reached out to you first. Some people don't like that we say the word reckless in that part of it. I like it. Because there's not really a better way to describe, like if you were a human and you saw someone doing it, they'd be like, they are recklessly careless with how they're loving. Be with me. Even though God can't be reckless, I know everybody who's not a Wesleyan is watching this telling me that I'm saying something weird, but God can't be reckless, but the best way we could define it is that seems reckless. Loving and bringing those people in first. That's not who you start a kingdom with. You with me? Great. So he's bringing them in. He's modifying behavior. He's interested in exposing these really deep issues in the hearts and the minds to create these new people. And it's these things that sabotage relationships, they corrode relationships. So the highest ethic for the kingdom, right, is healthy relationships, loving, healthy relationships. Of the people of the kingdom. So you can't murder someone, great, but you also shouldn't be angry at him. That's not a healthy, loving relationship. You with me? Great. So this week, we're going to deal with one of the most radical teachings of Jesus, which is loving people that hate you. And that you hate. That you can't stand, right? That at the end of the day, they can't stand you, you can't stand them. Actually, those are the people that you're called to love in this kingdom. No one's really said anything like that and lived by it super great. And no one's really said much after that. This is sort of the 2,000 years ago, Jesus was like, love your enemies. And it's become, a lot of people have been like, that's a great idea. It's hard. I don't know if I could do it, but that does sound good, doesn't it? And so we're going to stand here looking today at this sort of profound statement, love your enemies, and the implication it has on all of Jesus' teachings. So we're going to be looking at the beauty of this statement just set out by itself. It's just boom. It's tremendous. This capacity to transform human communities. So what Jesus is getting at here is it's a dynamite that when it goes off, it's gonna ruin your life in the absolute best way possible. So think about fully what he's saying. Okay, just. The danger of these 6 weeks, right? All it takes is like 5 minutes to read the 6 teachings of Jesus, right? But we've been in them for like a month and a half. I told you this is the conclusion of 8 weeks covering just this opening section of it. They're forming this portrait of a disciple. They're forming this portrait of a person transformed heart, mind, and soul into this kingdom person. And this one right here is the one that it goes off, and this is the one. If you haven't experienced a car crash yet, this is the car crash moment. When you do this is when you're going to butt heads against everything. He's worked his way through all of these things to turning your cheeks right, but now love your enemies. Last week, turn your cheek, right? It's not revenge, it's not retaliation, right? It's not passively doing nothing, but he calls this action, right? Standing there, he calls it love. And I said last week, this is going to tie in really great to love your enemies. We're getting this, what does this look like? And so this is this exploration of this today. This response of a disciple of Jesus to evil and wrongdoing. So he says, you have heard it said, I'll read it from over here. You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those that persecute you. So the other 6 times he's quoted from the Old Testament command in the Torah, and he affirms it or he qualifies it in some way. And then remember, he puts his teaching right beside it to fulfill it. So look at your Bibles here, if you've got them, or on your phone. Look down there at verse 43. I wrote 33. That would be a problem. Probably some of you maybe have a little footnote. Anyone have a footnote under there of where he got this from? We got a footnote for that one? I got it here. Leviticus 19:18. Leviticus 19:18. So it's got a little paraphrase. This is where he pulls this one from. Leviticus 19:18. God is speaking in this Leviticus moment, right? The people of Mount Sinai, they're being spoken to by God. This is the source of his quotation. And it says, love your enemy. What's missing though? I forgot. I'm going to put it up there, actually. That would be helpful. Let's put up Leviticus 19. Read this, then we're going to continue on. Here we go. Do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great, but judge your neighbor fairly. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life. I am the Lord. Do not hate a fellow Israelite in your heart. Rebuke your neighbor frankly, so that you will not share in the guilt. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself, for I am the Lord. What is missing in there? So he says, you've heard it said, love your enemy, or love your neighbor and hate your enemy. What do we not see up there in that quotation? Ooh, it's not up there, is it? It doesn't say hate your enemy in there. So where does Jesus get that idea? You've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. I don't see hate your enemy up there. If you were to look for the entire Hebrew Scriptures, you're not going to find a law or a command that says to hate your enemy. You'll find lots of stories about people hating their enemies, but you're not going to find a particular highlight of that law in there. So the key to this is to look at the introductory words of Jesus. This is where we've been building to seeing this happen, and we're going to flush it out here. The introductory words of this section. So let's hear it again. You've heard that it was said. Everyone say that again. We could. You've heard that it was said. Great, keep that in your mind. He says, you've heard that it was said. He didn't say, now you have read it in the Scriptures. Are you with me? He doesn't say, now you've read it in the Scriptures, but he says, you've heard that it was... Ooh, good. He's referring to the way that this verse in Leviticus has been understood and talked about and taught, and it's going to become really clear that Jesus thinks that this idea in the Torah has been tragically mishandled and misunderstood by people who have taught this section in Leviticus in the temple. That it's been, what he's alluding to is this big debate at the time about the meaning and the significance of this command. I've said this with other things, but this is we'll get it right here. If this is God's word, and one of the commands in the Torah is that you should love your neighbor as yourself, then there's a burning question that you should have right on the tip of your tongue when you hear that. This burning question that immediately comes to your mind. If I say, love your neighbor, your question should be, who counts? Who is my neighbor, right? If I told you the single greatest way to become a professional NBA player is to drink a milkshake, you would say, what flavor of milkshake? You with me? If I said the fries were bad, you'd be like, well, what's fries, right? McDonald's fries, obviously good. Wendy's fries, hit and miss, right? You could clarify, who counts? If it's love my neighbor, who does that mean? This is a raging debate in the time of the temple amongst all the Pharisees. Who is my neighbor? Who counts in this? Does that include the Roman soldier, right? I live next door to a Roman soldier. I mean, I don't live next door to him. He's over in the barracks. I mean, he's not my neighbor, right? This is a raging debate in Jesus' day, the implication of this command. So what you do, when you find a question about the meaning of a sentence in the Bible, the first thing you need to do is remember that the Bible needs to be read in context. So we're going to do that here in Leviticus 19. And I have highlighted the clues. I've highlighted the clues of who Leviticus 19 says your neighbor is. So again, let's see. Let's read those highlighted ones. Who do we have in there? We've got don't judge. Good. Ooh. Don't go about spreading slander among. Ooh. Don't do anything that endangers. Okay. Don't hate a fellow Israelite. Okay. But rebuke, I didn't highlight this one, your neighbor, frankly. Don't seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. So if you look at that quote, that verse Jesus quotes in there, who is your neighbor in Leviticus? Okay, great. Fellow Israelites. Anything else we kind of see in there? Your people. It's your people. The people in your tribe, right? They're right. You see it in there. Among your people, your fellow Israelites, among your people, they're your neighbors. You see this coming in there. So who are we called to love as ourselves? Israelites. That's kind of what we get in there, right? So if you take this in context in there, it's your people, it's your community member, your fellow Israelites. That's a big significant clue. So who's your neighbor? Who are they talking to? It's God talking to the Israelites gathered at Mount Sinai. He's talking about how they're to live in common life together. And so this immediate setting for Leviticus 19, if someone said, well, my Roman soldier down the way, is he my neighbor? You read this, what would you say? Is your Roman soldier your neighbor? No, probably not. He's a Roman soldier, right? Looks like they don't count. It looks like maybe even like traders that sold out to Rome wouldn't count either, right? So a tax collector who's like, I'm going to go work for Rome. Right? All of a sudden, they're not really a part of your people group anymore. So the debate rages on and on about rabbis think this way or they think that way. And Jesus is one of those who paid attention to a passage that happens just a couple sentences after this one in Leviticus 19. It's in the context of the single teaching, so it's relevant to this teaching. So let's continue. We're going to go to Leviticus 19, 33 through 34. Let's read this together here. Focus on the bold section. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as a native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So, first section, who are we called to love as ourselves in the first section? Who is the first people? Which are your people group, right? Your people group. Here we go. But then we have this section. Who's included now in this one? Ooh, people residing among you that aren't even a part of your group. Foreign-born. Okay, we're going to keep breaking this down. Non-Israelites that moved to the land of Israel, they're looking for work, they have opportunity, whatever it is. A safe haven amongst Israel. There's a place of hospitality for the people who aren't even a part of their tribe. They're to be treated and brought into the community as if they are fellow Israelites. So a lot of rabbis appeal to this paragraph. And they say, maybe this covers a whole bunch of people. Like, does the Roman soldier fit in this category? Like, if the Roman soldier is not an immigrant, right, but he's here to, like, break your kneecaps if you don't obey the Roman law and pay your taxes, does he still count if he's in there? Like, sure, he's a foreigner, but is he really a part of my people group? What about those trader tax collectors? They're not an immigrant. I mean, I'm just trying to bring you into this debate, right? You can start rattling off anybody in ancient. This was ravaging the discussions around this time. There's some historical interest for them in this. So Jesus, these people are living underneath the thumb of an oppressive military dictatorship 3 times as long as America has existed. Okay, for 600 years, over all this time, they've lived under Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Egypt, and now they're under Roman's thumb. So when they say, like, who do I include in loving this? Because it feels like no one's loving us. Are you with me? So for persecuted religious ethnic minority, these are burning questions. Who counts when you tell me to love my neighbor? Because a lot of people aren't returning the favor. So Jesus picks up Leviticus 19 and he expands on it. So he expands it beyond what any rabbi in his day would have said. It's not just loyalty to people within the tribe of Israel. It's not just care for the loyalty of the people outside of the tribe that are there peaceably. Jesus says the love of God that's being commanded in Leviticus 19 is a love without boundaries. It's a love for your friends, for your enemies, and it's a love for people who hate you and people that you hate. So where does he get that idea from, right? You're not going to find that in Leviticus 19. I could go through the whole rest of this, and you're not going to see any more expounding on what neighbor means. But Jesus gets this idea from somewhere, and he inserts it into what this meaning fully means. And he gets it from two places. I'm going to have you repeat after me the two places he gets this idea from. Are you ready? The first one is weather patterns. Say weather. That's where he gets the idea from first, is weather. The second one is the scriptures, just a different part. Say different part. So the first one is, and the second one is a different part. So, just a different part. So here we go. I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Why? I'm going to get to the weather. It takes a minute to build to it. Why should we do that? Love those that persecute us. So, say you become the children of the Father in heaven, and this is about reflecting that love, the character traits of God that are revealed in Jesus. We talked about this in creation. We're image bearers, boundlessly giving all of this away. And he's called rich in what? Love. That's a terrible word. So I put a little bit of Rob Bell up there. It's from Pneuma. It's Flame, I think is what that one's called. And he says it's so funny in English. In one breath, I can say, I love my wife. And in the next breath, I can say, I really love tacos, though, too. And somehow those mean the same? Different? It's the same word, though? It's a terrible, terrible word in English. And it's not a translation problem. This is a problem with the English language, right? This word love is the most unhelpful word we have in English because it means different things, right? I love my wife, but I love pizza. I love my family, my wife, and my children. I also love hot wings and football and video games, right? It's a really useless word. We usually think of love as these like warm feelings, right? When I say like I love my wife, and then you go, butterflies, right? The day I married her, I remember being terrified and nervous. And the person who was helping officiate the wedding and my best man basically like picked me up by my shoulders and like walked me towards the front. I was so terrified. And then she turned down the aisle and I wept and I warm fuzzies everywhere. You know what I'm talking about. This is what we generally associate with love, this sort of like warm butterflies. And the same thing can sort of happen when you're at a restaurant and you're waiting for your tacos to come, or fajitas, and you hear it. Fajitas are the most like attention-grabbing food on the planet, but you hear it. They pour the water on the hot skillet back there so it starts sizzling and you hear that pshh, and everyone's like, that dude. And you know you're about to just have the best day of your life. You with me? We use it for the same. It's these warm, fuzzy feelings. English, that it refers to that feeling, but it's an emotion that happens to you. But Jesus means something completely different. And so he talks about the Hebrew language has 3 words for it. There's 3 there, and the Greek language has 3, really 4. Now, the inside of my wedding band, I have all 4 of the Greek words for love engraved on the inside of my wedding band. So in Hebrew, it's the dod, raya, and ahava. So everyone say dod. Say raya. Now say ahava. My mouth is so dry I can't do it right. Ahava. Now, the Greek ones I'm a little more familiar with, so we're going to transition to the Greek ones. They break down the same way. The first one is phyla. Say phyla. Good. The second one is eros. And the third one is agape. Okay, good. But Jesus, he's referring to these words, and the one that he uses here is the word agape. So let's break them down. Phyla. Say it again. Now say the word Philadelphia. Did you hear it in there? What is Philadelphia's name? The city of brotherly love. Right? It's this phyla. It's this connection between people that are related, or their deep connection of friendship. Are you with me? That's this one. Then there's eros. Everyone say, think of, we'll just go straight to Latin. It leads to the Latin word erotic. I don't need to describe that one. There's babies in the room. Okay, that's that one. The last one is agape. This is this ahava in Hebrew, an agape. This is the word that's being used here. do you ever have warm feelings towards the person that has ever backhand slapped you? Do they slap you and you're like, I got the warmest feelings that they hate me, right? You don't, okay? You don't have that. So Jesus is asking right here, he's not asking you to generate warm feelings about the people who backhand slap you, turn the other cheek. There's not like, love them. Just get those like warm Philadelphia Eros feelings about the people who slap you. This is not what he's saying, right? It's not that at all. What Jesus is talking about is this word agape or ahava. Say agape. It's this attitude, this mindset, this action that flows out of having this mindset. So God has chosen to perform actions of kindness and generosity towards people, regardless of how they behave, right? Regardless of whether they like him or not, whether he happens to like what they're doing at that moment, God has chosen this attitude of reflecting undeserved gratitude and love towards that person. He's chosen this word, say agape. It's a mindset. It's not that Jesus is asking you to generate fake warm fuzzies for your enemy. He's not like, just love him, man. You with me? Okay, that's not it. What he's asking you to do is to choose to view them in a different way. To choose to view them in a way that God sees the person. Within the economy of God, this person is beloved. They're a human being. They're made in God's image. They might be screwed up in ways that are different than me, but they're a human, and God has made them in his image. And he's come along to us in this person of Jesus, and he chose to do an act of love, agape, on their behalf. Right? If I'm a disciple of Jesus, I don't have the right or the authority to treat someone as unloved. Because when Jesus is treating them as someone who is loved, that's the logic of all of this, right? I don't have the right to deny someone that agape and generosity because Jesus didn't deny it either. I can't stand that person, but they are made in God's image. Jesus gave his life. He died for that person. He chose to adopt an attitude towards that person. And there are some actions that we do because we agape love people. I think all three of these show up in a really healthy marriage. This is what Rob Bell's video is about, right? So I love my wife and my kids. Now I love my wife differently than I love my children. Okay, Ashley's my best friend. She's Phyla. This is why all three of them are in the ring. She's my Philadelphia, right? I love her in that way. I would spend all day doing whatever. We're doing a project in our house. It is not fun, but I do it because we're friends. This is a good way to spend time. Sometimes Charlie's helpful when we do those. Other times, not as helpful. Great. I love my wife over here too. I don't want to explain that. Great. We don't need to do that. But also, I've said this before. I would do anything for my wife. It would take a ginormous amount of just unbelievable hatred, vitriol, betrayal, dangerous horribleness for me to not do anything for my wife. This is this agape. I'm her friend. Yep. And then we're more than just friends. I would shove her out of the way of a moving car and take the hit for myself. Are you with me? There's other times when there's clearly a choice to be made for people that are close. It's hard to love everybody the way that I would dive in front of a car for my wife. But that's what Jesus is getting at here. That your attitude towards them reflects that they are worth everything. So look at what he goes on to say in verse 46. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Don't even tax collectors do that? And if you greet your own people, what are you doing more than others? Don't even pagans do that? Pagan is not a negative word here. It just means a non-Jewish person. Don't the non-Jewish people that don't even have the laws of the Torah about how we interact, that understand the goodness of God, even they're nice to each other. Jesus is acknowledging that humans deep down amongst their own people are actually pretty decent, nice people. Humans are pretty decent when we're inside our circle, when we're inside of our tribe, when we're with those that they think like we do. It's not hard for us to choose to do acts of unbelievable kindness and generosity towards the people who are like us. Jesus, that's not the issue, right? He says, they do that too, right? We don't like people from other tribes. And I don't think anyone wants to argue with Jesus about that one. Groups of people tend to be more immoral than individuals within those groups. My quote about this is, I think I've said this in here before, but it's just like so poignant. I don't know why it's in this movie from the 1990s, but Men in Black, you know? You seen this movie? And they're sitting by I don't know what river. They're sitting by a river on a bench. And it's right after Will Smith discovers aliens are real. And he's trying to go comprehend all this. And he tells the guy who's known this, he goes, why don't you tell people? Why don't you tell the whole world? Let us figure this out. And Kay's response is, a person is smart. People are dumb and dangerous. You get groups of people, and we tend to not be as good in groups. Jesus says, look at human beings. Individually, you're all pretty decent, but when you're within your circle, you can be fickle and selective and self-centered with how you distribute your agape. The kingdom is a community, right? That operates completely different. It's the children of God reflecting the Father that's in heaven, and this is what he means in verse 48. And I think this is the one that man, if you weren't think it was hard before, here we go. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So we're reflecting. If this is who God is, rich in love, and we're supposed to reflect it, then we have to be perfect, just like God is perfect. Now, I think a lot of us might hear that, and I've heard it before, and you can think like, I'm done for. I'll try, I'll give it my best shot, but I don't expect much, right? So, man, part of it is our English word perfect. I scrapped an entire sermon series where I was going to break down the idea of perfection using the garden. I'll bring it back sometime. It just means something totally different, this concept of perfect. We can do a whole teaching on it, but I'm going to do one really quick for you. And I'll just do like one quick section about it. I'm leaving Leviticus 11 and 1 Corinthians 11. I'm leaving those all behind. We're just going to jump right here. The Greek word for perfect is the word teleos. Say teleos. Ooh, and if you were to do a word study on this in the New Testament, and you would find that the English word in this context doesn't get used most of the ways for perfect. It's this word mature. Say mature. So teleos, mature. Teleos, mature. Good. This is describing someone that has reached the completion point in their growth and development as a human. You have made it. You are expressing fully exactly what you're a full, mature person. So if you look at the passages that Jesus is alluding to, it's this idea of becoming complete. Okay, for Jesus, this is both the command to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, but it's also a promise that if there is someone or if there's something about there's just something about when a human intentionally steps over a divide or boundary or tribal line or performs an act or chooses an attitude that performs an act of complete benevolence and generosity that completes that person in the image of God. Are you with? This is what he's getting at. Be perfect, right? Complete what your image should be. When you have a line and you step over it and act more like God, you are teleos. You are going towards maturity, full completeness in what you are designed to be. Does this make sense? Someone outside the circle hates you, but you go against the grain of every intuition, every natural human instinct, and you look at compassion, you perform acts of generosity towards them. Jesus says, humans never look more like God than in that moment. That's be perfect. You look the most like an image bearer in the moment you go against the grain and perform an act of undeserved love. That's when you look the most like God. That's when you are the closest to completing what you were made to be. There's something about love and the not fuzzy-wuzzy biblical love that's choosing to view someone as a human being with dignity, regardless of their behavior. And when humans do that, when disciples do that, that's humanity complete. That's perfect. Jesus already blazed a trail on our behalf. What we're called to do and trust in and believe in his agape and the agape for the enemy. If any of us are going to be around people we find difficult, maybe in the next, weekend, maybe there's a holiday. You're going to get around a bunch of family somewhere, and maybe some of them are difficult to be around. I don't know. I'm just making it up. My mom's like, who are you talking about? Right? Here's what you have to do, right? This is what Jesus did, right? He takes the bread and the cup, and he encourages us to think about that one person and remember Jesus' agape and ask if you can do that for somebody else. Do this in remembrance of me. Jesus. Thank you, Blake. Jesus in that moment, right? He knows. He said, the person who's going to betray me has dipped his bread in the cup with me. And yet he still broke bread with him. Do this in remembrance of me.